So what if D.D. Palmer was a fish peddler? Jesus Christ was a carpenter, and that didn't denigrate what he had to teach. It's kind of nice to be one of the early speakers on your program. Last night I circulated around in the lobby of the Black Hawk Hotel and talked with all of the other speakers. In fact, we swapped funny stories. So I can get up now and tell all their best material, and they have to follow me. Last graduation, or the graduation before, I had the privilege of being commencement speaker. At that time, I told a story which I think bears repeating today. It's a story written by H.G. Wells called The Valley of the Blind. And it's interesting how, even though H.G. Wells knew nothing of chiropractic, he wrote about chiropractic thinking in this story. Somehow, whatever I read seems to remind me of chiropractic. That's like the fellow who went to a psychiatrist because he had a problem. And the psychiatrist gave him a Rorschach test. He made these ink blots and showed the man the ink blot and said, "What is it?" And the man looked at the ink blot and he said, "Well, that's easy. That's a man and woman making love." And the psychiatrist looked at the ink blot and he couldn't quite understand the analysis, so he put it down and he took another one. And he showed that to the man and he says, "What's that?" And without a second's hesitation, the man said, "Aha, that's a man and woman making love." And the psychiatrist thought there's something weird going on here. He then took a plain piece of paper and drew on it a single line and said, "What's that?" The man said, "Well, that's a man and a woman making love." And finally he took a last piece of paper and put in a tiny little dot, and he said to the man, "What's that?" And the man said, "That's easy. That's a man and a woman making love." And the psychiatrist said, "I can see your problem. You're a sex maniac." And the man said, "Me? You're the one who keeps drawing the dirty pictures." Apparently whatever he looked at reminded him of only one thing. Well, whatever I look at reminds me of chiropractic. So here was I reading a story that had nothing to do with chiropractic, but I think you should hear about it. It's a story about a remote village hidden in the Andes Mountains in Colombia, South America. Thousands and thousands of years ago, thousands of generations ago, there was a genetic weakness among some of the people living in this remote village. And as a result of it, they all tended to have weak eyes. But as new blood came in from neighboring villages and they intermarried, that weak gene remained a recessive one, and there was never any real problem. But one day, due to a cataclysm of nature, a tremendous earthquake deposited millions of tons of rock on the only pathway into and out of the village. The village became totally shut off from all of society. And as a result, with no more new people coming in, the people living in this village began to intermarry. And as they intermarried, the recessive gene became dominant, and little by little eyesight was lost, until after several generations, every man, woman, and child in that valley was totally blind. As more and more generations went by, not only was eyesight gone, but now even memory and understanding of what eyesight was had disappeared. People didn't even have a word for eyesight. Through the physiological law of use or lose, because they weren't using their eyes, even those organs became vestigial and disappeared. And the people in this remote village just had plain, smooth places in their face where you and I have eyes. Eyebrows and eyelashes were no longer known. And it was indeed the Valley of the Blind. One day in fairly modern times, a mountain climbing expedition going through that area was headed by a man called Bogota, from the village of, or from the city of Bogota in Colombia. And as they were trying to find their way around the mountain, Bogota got separated from the rest of the group. He fell over a cliff, was severely injured, and was given up by his companions for dead. They turned and made their way back to civilization, leaving him in this remote little cleft in the hillside, given up for dead. But he wasn't dead, and he recovered from his wounds. And he began to live off the land. He was, after all, an experienced mountain climber. He knew which berries to eat and how to trap small game. And he survived, and he grew stronger, and he started to try and find his way out. But because he was wedged so far into this crevice in the rock, there was no way he could climb back up the sheer precipice to the pathway back to civilization. So he went the other way instead, and he wandered for days, lost and alone, and the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, and then one day, quite by chance, he went through a small cave, through an opening on the other side, and came out upon a beautiful, lush, green valley. And there, down at the bottom of the valley, he saw signs of habitation. There was indeed a village. Unbeknownst to him, Bogota had stumbled upon the Valley of the Blind. Of course, he didn't know they were blind in the beginning. And as he moved down into this community, he thought at last he had a chance to get back with people. He'd been alone for so long. He welcomed the sight of his fellow man. But as he got closer and closer, he realized there was something strange about these people. They tended to walk with their hands in front of them. And there were ropes set up from building to building that the people were holding onto as guidelines and cables. And as he got even closer, he realized that every man, woman, and child in that village was indeed totally blind. Now, somewhere Bogota had heard that in the Valley of the Blind, the one-eyed man is king. And he felt here was his golden opportunity to serve his fellow man. He could go down into the Valley of the Blind and allow them to use his eyes. He could be their passport to sight. And he went down there radiant with joy at the opportunity to help and to be among fellow human beings. And in the beginning, they welcomed him with open arms until he tried to explain to them about his eyesight. Remember, in their language, they had no word for eyesight. They had no knowledge, no understanding of what he was trying to communicate. Can you imagine, for example, trying to explain the taste of chocolate to somebody who's never tasted chocolate? How do you explain what it tastes like? You have nothing to compare it to. And here he was trying to explain eyesight to people who had no knowledge, no history of knowledge of eyesight. And like most people faced with something they can't understand, they labeled him as being a bit weird. And they were a little afraid of him. And Bogota was determined. He said, no, you don't understand. He said, through these openings in my face, I can actually see pictures. And they said, what are pictures? And he said, well, for example, if you were to cast your face upward, overhead, you'll see the clouds and the sun in the sky. And now they knew there was something strange about him, because their history taught them that over their head was a broad stone covering that extended through all eternity. And everybody knew that's what was up there, a smooth stone roof. What's this nonsense about sky and fleecy clouds and sunshine? So they began to realize that this man was not only weird, but perhaps he was dangerous. This was no person to expose to their children. And they segregated him. They wouldn't allow him to mix with the children in case he contaminated them with his weird ideas. And again, in an effort to explain, he said, look, let me demonstrate to you. And he took the hands of the head man of the village and put the man's fingers up against his own face so the man could feel his eyes. And the man was revolted by these horrible soft spots in somebody's hard face. Can you imagine touching somebody on top of the head and your fingers sink into a soft, squishy brain? Well, this is how that headman felt when his fingers sunk into the face of this Bogota. And now they were really bothered by him, and they drove him out of the village in fear. And he turned back and he begged with them to be allowed to stay. And they said, all right, we'll allow you to stay, provided you don't contaminate our children with your wild ideas, provided you learn to conform. And for quite a while he was okay hanging around the village. He was tolerated. But as he began to make friends more and more with the people, there was one particular gal there that he became interested in, and she became interested in him. And after a while, these two decided they'd like to get married. And now Bogota was faced with going to the girl's father and asking for her hand in marriage. Now, at first, the father was absolutely adamant. There was no way he was going to let his daughter marry this freak. Except they began to think, well, this chick is not such a good looker anyway. As a matter of fact, the other guys in the village didn't particularly dig her because where pretty girls had plain, smooth faces, this one had vestigial eyebrows and eyelashes. So she was quite revolting to the rest of the guys around, and perhaps Bogota was going to be the last chance she would have to get married. So the old man got a little interested. But before doing anything, he decided to consult with the head men and the wise men of the village, and they had a conference one night, and the next morning the father came to Bogota and said, "We've solved your problem. I'm going to allow you to marry my daughter on one condition. The wise men of the village have decided that the thing that makes you crazy is these soft spots in your face. We have a surgeon who will remove those soft spots. And then you'll be just like the rest of us. You won't be crazy anymore, and I'll allow you to marry my daughter." And as you read this story, your blood begins to run cold. You can see where H.G. Wells is going. You can see the turn of mind of Bogota, who is faced with the alternative of either giving up his eyesight to be tolerated in the Valley of the Blind, or keeping his eyesight and being turned out into the world at large, friendless, to roam for all time, perhaps without ever again contacting another human being. And then goes the debate in Bogota's mind, as you see him vacillating back and forth which way to go. And you begin to realize that he's giving up. That as the pages are turned one by one, he's getting closer and closer to the fatal surgery that will make him as blind as everybody else. And on the night before the ceremony is to be performed, Bogota leaves the circle of the village fire for the last time to go out and look at those things that he can still see, because in the morning he'll be blind. And as he walks away from the village, he turns back and looks at all the beauty that nature has provided. And he began to walk a little bit up the hillside. And the farther he got away from the village and the closer he got to nature, the more he questioned the wisdom of his judgment. The better things began to look to him, and the worse the girl began to seem. And then as the story ends, Bogota makes his decision. He forsakes all human companionship. He leaves the girl, he keeps his eyes, and he wanders friendless and alone for the rest of his life, lost in a wilderness, but at least keeping his God-given eyesight, rather than giving up that gift in order to be tolerated in the Valley of the Blind. Why is this a chiropractic story? Because that's exactly the decision that you are being asked to make. You are being asked to give up not your eyesight, but your vision. Millions are born without much vision, and that's unfortunate. But to be born with vision, or to be exposed to vision, and then to give it up because we don't have the courage to go it alone, that's not unfortunate, that's tragic. You are being asked, and you will be asked, to give up your God-given wisdom, your vision, your understanding, in order to be tolerated out there in the Valley of the Blind. B.J. quoted the Bible one time. He said, "Where there is no vision, the people perish." There are millions who have the eyesight of a hawk and the vision of a clam. You are going out into a society and a community that has the eyesight of a hawk and the vision of a clam. And they will fight against your vision because they lack understanding. I don't want you to believe that the path you have chosen in chiropractic is an easy path. It is not the line of least resistance. It's following that line of least resistance as B.J. said, that makes rivers and men crooked. If we follow that line, we know where we're going to end up. Chiropractic is something so different from what society now knows, now understands, and now accepts, that you will of necessity be an outcast as long as you stick to radical new ideas. If you want to be accepted, then give up your new ideas, pluck out your eyes, and be as blind as the rest of society. Then and only then will they tolerate you. In order to be accepted by a sick society, you must become as sick as they are. If chiropractic is to be accepted in a sick and misunderstanding society, chiropractic must give up its wisdom, its understanding, and the things that make it different from that society. Now your choice is clear-cut. Do you change chiropractic to conform to a sick society? Or do you change that sick society until it's ready to understand your chiropractic principle? This is your decision. All right, what is the difference between the chiropractic way and the other way? Is there that much difference? I did a radio show in Detroit, Michigan. I did a television show, as a matter of fact, in Detroit, Michigan, not too long ago, and the interviewer was very much interested in the subject of acupuncture. Because since President Nixon's trip to the Orient, acupuncture has leaped into the forefront of American health thinking. And the interviewer asked me, isn't acupuncture very close to chiropractic? He said, after all, they're both drugless. Don't you and they have a lot in common? And the way I explain the difference is the way I explain the difference between chiropractic and anything else. Many people tend to think that the healing arts can be divided in two, with the drug professions on one side and the drugless on the other. Many chiropractors try to live by that distinction, saying as long as we are drugless, we are non-medical, and therefore we're in our own little ballpark. The distinction, however, doesn't lie there. If we divide the healing arts in two, we don't find medical doctors on one side and all the rest on the other. What we find is chiropractors on one side and all the rest on the other. There is a philosophical difference between chiropractic and everything else relating to healing and the healing arts. We over here are the DCs. Now you may think DC is Doctor of Chiropractic, and I suppose it is. But DC is also a doctor of cause. We are the doctors of cause. We are also the doctors of correction of cause. Maybe we should be DCCs. And over here on the other side, we have the DTs. A DT is a doctor of therapy. He treats disease. Chiropractors do not treat disease. Chiropractic is based upon the premise that this human body has built into it the ability to heal itself. That this body is created by all of the wisdom of the universe. The scientists tell us the body is capable of living for 120 to 150 years. Now, I can't believe for one moment that a wisdom which was smart enough to create this body to live for 120 to 150 years was so stupid as to put into it a gallbladder which is only good for 40 or 50 years. I must assume, therefore, that the entire body is meant to last us as long as we live. The body, in fact, replaces itself as we go along. There is no such thing as curing disease. When the cells of your body get sick, even nature can't cure them. Sick cells can never be healed. They will die. But that's nothing to be concerned about, because even the healthy cells die after a few weeks or a few months, only to be replaced by new cells, so that that which we call healing is in fact the creation of new life. If I brush my hand, I brush off millions of dead cells. As you sit here right now, the cells of your heart are dying.
But don't worry about it, because as one dies, nature makes a new one to replace it. A heart cell lasts approximately 90 days. If you have a sick heart cell right now, 90 days from now, that sick cell will be dead and be replaced by a new one. Now, of course, if the new cell comes in just as sick as the old one, the disease will go on forever until it kills you. But if that sick cell dies and is replaced by a strong, healthy cell, the disease has gone. Who cured it? Doctors of chiropractic can't cure disease. Life cures disease by creating new cells to replace old ones. All of healing is the creation of life. And before we go around telling people that we can cure disease, we better ask ourselves if we can create life. Only that wisdom which created the body can recreate it, and that recreation daily is what we call healing. So chiropractors don't try to treat, cure, or heal disease. What does a chiropractor do? One thing and one thing only. He restores and maintains the mechanical integrity of the nervous system, based upon the fact that in order to be healthy, every human body needs a good nerve supply to every organ, every gland, every part, every cell. If there is no good nerve supply, if any single part of this body is deprived of proper neurological function, there is no way on God's earth that that body will ever function properly again, and all the pills, powders, potions, acupuncture needles, physical therapy treatments, voodoo, witchcraft, prayers, or anything else is ever going to make it work again until somebody restores the flow of life from brain to tissue cell over those nerves, and that can only be done by a specific, scientifically applied chiropractic adjustment. Chiropractors don't treat disease, and they don't help nature. I just love to see chiropractors trying to help nature. All of the wisdom of the universe, and you're going to help it? All right, let's talk to the seniors for a moment. All the smart ones, you all ready for your state boards? You passed your national boards? You all remember your splanknology? Let's go back into the liver for a moment, okay? Think about your own liver. Don't worry about the state board's liver. Think about your own liver. Pick out one little cell in your liver, and you tell me what chemical change it needs at this moment to function better. Well, before we start helping nature, don't you think we should know the answer to that question? And yet all of the practice of the other healing arts is based upon a person getting sick, going to a doctor, talking to the doctor for 15 minutes, and then the doctor tells him what changes his liver needs. He doesn't know what his own liver needs. You can't help nature. And yet all of the things that are done in the name of chiropractic, but outside the realm of chiropractic, are done, quote, to help nature, unquote. Let's burn one thought into our minds. In order to heal, nature needs no help. Let's remember that we can never help nature because nature needs no help. No help from medical doctors, no help from acupuncturists, no help from osteopaths, chemists, therapists, chiropractors. In order to heal, nature needs no help from anyone. Just no interference. Now, your job and mine is very simple. Get the interference out of the way. We don't have to cure. Nature knows how to cure by creating new life. Until you can teach nature how to make new cells better, you do much better staying the heck out of the way and let nature do her job. Leave that to the expert. In order to heal, nature needs no help from anybody. Just no interference. Don't you think we have a big enough job to do getting the interference out of the way? If only we did just that, then we have all of the wisdom of the universe once again expressing within that body, creating living tissue the way it was meant to, and restoring total life to a body which was hitherto deprived of life energy by a vertebral subluxation. So over on one side of the fence, we have the doctor of cause and the doctor of correction of cause, and on the other side, the doctor of therapy, the man who treats diseases. Now, it doesn't matter about your methodology of treating. There are some people that think chiropractic is different because it relates to spinal adjusting and the others don't. That's not true. There are other healing arts that relate to spinal adjusting, including physical medicine. There's an organization now called the North American Academy of Manipulative Medicine. Medical doctors called physiatrists who meet together on weekends and teach each other crude procedures in spinal manipulation for the treatment of backaches, stiff necks, headaches, orthopedic problems, all of the things on which some of our chiropractic friends would like to hang their hat. There is a movement in chiropractic to limit this practice to people who manifest symptoms of backaches and headaches, saying that if we hold it right there, we can be accepted. We'll give up our vision for the sake of acceptance in the Valley of the Blind. Unfortunately, of course, that part of our practice has already been taken over by the physical therapists, by the osteopaths, by the physiatrists. If chiropractic is nothing more than spinal manipulation, they've already stolen that. They've written books about it. The one thing they can't take from you is your chiropractic philosophy that the body cures itself. Because if they were to take that from you, they'd have to give up all the quackery that they've been practicing for these 200 years and all of the millions of dollars that's going into their pockets from this fraudulent quackery practice. The only thing you have, the only reason for surviving is your philosophy. The fact that we don't treat or cure disease, but that this body has inherent within it the ability to heal itself from every disease known to man without exception. There's no such thing as an incurable disease. Oh, there are incurable patients. There are some patients who've gone so far that nothing can save them now. They've gone beyond the limitations of matter, beyond the limitations of time. But for every disease from which somebody dies, somebody else recovers. I had a discussion with a medical doctor about cancer. Half of our chiropractors are afraid to talk about cancer because that's a radical thing to talk about. Wow, you'll be labeled as a radical if you think you can help a cancer patient. I know this. If I had cancer, I'd want to make darn sure I had no nerve interference, wouldn't you? So I talked with a medical doctor about cancer, and he said, yeah, but you can't claim any chiropractic cures for cancer, you know. There are thousands of cancer patients who get well every year all by themselves, without chemotherapy, without drugs, that is, without surgery, without x-ray treatment. They just get well. So that if one of your patients were to get well, you can't say chiropractic cured him. He may have got well anyway. I said, that's great. I don't want to say chiropractic cured him. I never claimed that chiropractic cures cancer. I just got through telling you chiropractic doesn't cure anything. But listen to what the doctor said. When this body is working right, it has the ability to recover even from cancer. Hey, you know something? If the body were working right, maybe it wouldn't get cancer in the first place. How does that hit you? People ask, what can chiropractic do for cancer? I'll tell you what it can do. How about prevention? This seems to be, to me, the only intelligent approach to health, the one approach that chiropractic has missed all of these years, and that our medical friends and our other non-chiropractic friends can never get. The maintenance of the integrity of the nervous system for the prevention of dis-ease. And while I'm on the subject of this word, dis-ease, let's rub that one in a little bit, because it, more than anything else I can think of, explains the big difference between chiropractic and therapy. And under therapy, I include anything and everything that is done to treat disease, including chemotherapy, surgery, acupuncture, physical therapy, psychotherapy, concept therapy, prayer therapy, manipulative therapy, anything you do to treat or cure disease, vitamin therapy, they all belong over here. There is that condition which allows all diseases to exist. What is the one common underlying factor which every sick person has? Their body wasn't working right in the first place. If their body were working right, there's no way on God's earth they would get sick. Why do you think people get sick? You heard Dave ask the question a few minutes ago, speaking of his grandfather. Why is it two people sitting at the same table, eating the same food, working at the same bench, doing the same thing with the same genetic factors all of their life, twin brothers, one gets gallstones and the other doesn't? Why? Is it bad luck? Come on, let's be logical. We're supposed to be scientists. Is it logical to you that luck rules whether a person gets healthy or not? That's like you going out in practice, and you do everything in a sloppy, disorganized, backhanded way, and expect good fortune to make you a successful chiropractor. And we see the guy who is successful, and we say, boy, he sure hit it lucky. Luck has nothing to do with it. There are laws of cause and effect. We establish certain causes, and the effects must follow as inevitably as night follows day. Why do people get sick? Not through bad luck, but because something in their body is not working right. When their body is not working right, we call that condition dis-ease. Lack of ease, lack of function. Here's another way to explain it. Disorder. What is health? All of your patients now are coming to you to find health. Can you give it to them? No, because it was theirs in the first place. What do you mean? What is health? Health is a state of harmony in which the 25 to 30 quadrillion cells of their body are doing their job. If every one of those cells were doing its job in harmony in response to a single control, then the person would live a full, normal life. I believe life should be like a candle that burns brightly from the beginning all the way down to the very end, and then sputters once or twice and goes out. Sickness and disease are not normal, you know. In spite of the ads you hear on radio and television selling pills for ordinary morning headaches, they're not really ordinary. You're not supposed to get headaches every morning. You're not supposed to get cramps every month. You're not supposed to have a gallbladder go bad at you at age 35 or 40. Sickness and disease are not normal. They are the result of a disorder in the body. Disorganization. Health is harmony. It is order. For your body to function in health, you have 25 to 30 quadrillion working parts, each one with a highly specialized job to do. If every cell in your body were doing its job, there's no way on God's earth you'd ever get sick. Life, as I said, would be like a candle, burning brightly from the beginning all the way down to the very end, then sputter once or twice and go out. Health is your God-given birthright. You have a body that's supposed to maintain you in health. If it's not doing its job, blame that body. The cause of sickness is a body which is malfunctioning. That malfunction we label as dis-ease, dysfunction, disorder. This universe functions in beautiful harmony. Anything which works harmoniously is well organized and healthy. If you belong to a Toastmasters club, or any other kind of a club or organization, where things work in harmony, all responding to a single control, you have order. You have a tightly knit group that is healthy. But if everybody's going off in different directions, doing his own thing, with no coordination, you have disorder, disharmony, disorganization, and a sick group, which won't last very long. A healthy body, then, is one which is in order, controlled by the wisdom of the universe. And a sick body is one which is in a state of disorder. And you know what our medical friends do? They say, yes, but we've got to specialize. It's not just disorder. He's got a stomach disorder, kidney disorder, mental disorder, rectal disorder. And they try and separate all the parts because it's convenient for study. That's like you studying where the central nervous system ends and the peripheral nervous system begins. You know the true answer to that? Nowhere. The body doesn't have two nervous systems. It only has one. Ask the body. Didn't think of that, did you? Order is when all of the parts are working together. And in chiropractic, we try to express that the only reason you get sick is because there's a breakdown in communications between the central control and the rest of the body. There is disorder resulting, dis-ease. See, the medical profession, and I mention those because they're the biggest group in this camp of therapists. There are others who follow along in the therapy camp, but the medical group seem to be the thought leaders of that group, and all the others trail along and follow. The medical profession says that disease is the enemy. It's an entity to be rooted out and destroyed. Cancer makes you sick. The chiropractor says, nonsense. Cancer doesn't make you sick. You get cancer because you're sick. Cancer is not a disease which comes into the body and makes you sick. Cancer is the end result of years of dis-ease, of malfunction. Diabetes doesn't make you sick. Sickness makes you diabetic. Influenza doesn't make you sick. Sickness allows influenza to develop. And so it is through every single disease you can mention. There's no such thing as a disease entity lurking out there in the environment and some healthy character goes walking by and the disease jumps on him and makes him sick. And yet all of therapy is based upon this supposition that healthy people get sick because they happen to trip over a disease somewhere. God, you wonder where LBJ got sick. You remember a few years ago, LBJ had gallstones? All the specialists came in from all over the country to diagnose him and incidentally to treat him illegally in a jurisdiction where they weren't licensed. They examined him and they said, well, he's got gallstones. Cut out his gallbladder. That'll make him healthy. Huh? The thing that bugs me is when all of these experts came in, don't you think one of them might wonder, why did he get sick? I mean, forget about his politics for a minute. Why do you think he got sick? Where do you think LBJ got his gallstones from? You think he caught them from Hubert? Huh? What, did Ladybird put him in his chicken soup instead of matzo balls? Why? And yet all of our medical friends don't ask you, he's sick, bad luck, cut him open. Gallstones didn't make him sick. Sickness allowed gallstones to develop. So the enemy is not sickness, it's not disease, it is that dis-ease, that disorder, that disharmony which allows these states of malfunction to develop to the point where they present symptoms. And all of your life you've been lied to. You've been led to believe that if you have no symptoms, that means you're healthy. And so we found Gil Hodges for 17 years taking pills to suppress symptoms of circulatory damage. For 17 years of his life. He took pills which totally eradicated his symptoms of circulatory damage. He had no symptoms at all on that beautiful day a couple of months ago when he went out and played 36 holes of golf. And then this fine, strapping young man came off the golf course and dropped dead of a heart attack. Totally asymptomatic. You want me to believe that he was healthy? The fact that he had no symptoms doesn't mean that he's healthy. And yet you and I have been trained to reserve our chiropractic for just those people who have symptoms. By what right do we hold chiropractic back and only give it to people who are so sick that symptoms have developed? I hear statements like, chiropractic gets sick people well. Well, if it does, it's a rotten shame that we let them get sick in the first place. Seems to me the only intelligent approach to health is the restoration and maintenance of the integrity of the nervous system before people get sick, not after. What the hell are we doing? We've got practices and fee systems and office procedure systems based upon allowing mankind to get sick. Even your Medicaid, Medicare insurance programs are all based upon the fact that you don't get any help until you're sick. What do they mean by sick? Presenting symptoms. And the insurance form, you ask to list the symptoms. If there are no symptoms, the insurance companies won't pay. In other words, the insurance programs are owned and operated by the same medical thinking that owns and operates the therapies. They are not geared towards chiropractic thinking. What we need is a total revolution in health thinking. You see, your problem is you're trying to promote chiropractic in a medically oriented world, and it can't be done. You've got to first disorient the world. You've got to turn them around. Now, if it sounds as though I'm laying out a blueprint for a revolution, that's exactly what we're going to have to do if we want to turn this world around. And before you go out there and buy a gun, let me explain, I'm not talking about bloody revolution. I'm talking about revolving the thinking of mankind, turning it around. But you can't turn them around by thinking and acting the way they do. I see chiropractors trying to conform to the pattern set up by a medical thinking society. The more you act, talk, and think the way the medically oriented society does, the less chance there will ever be of them turning around to your way of thinking. Your job is leadership, to change the world. And I'm constantly accused of this. Reggie, what do you want to do? Change the world? You're damn right I do. I don't like this world the way it is. Right now, there's never been a better time in the history of man for the development and growth of chiropractic principle. There's a revolution going on our college campuses all over this country, a turning around of thinking, a very serious attempt to end the pollution of our environment. And we're in the heart of this battle to clean up the pollution of the internal environment that is perpetrated by the leaders of the therapeutic professions, meaning the chemical industry and their pushers, the medical profession. You and I are in a position to start in leadership here. Most of us have been followers all of our life. Get in front and lead, or get in line and follow, or get out of the way because chiropractic's coming through. We talk about electing leaders. You know, you're going out into your community and you are going to be a thought leader. But you don't lead people by standing where they are. People are like wet spaghetti. They can be pulled but not pushed. Think about it. If you want to move people, you've got to move out in front of where they are. You can't stand squarely in the middle and say, follow me. Squarely in the middle, there's nowhere to follow you. Take a position and stand by it. They'll follow you, don't worry. And then don't move back to meet them halfway. Take another step, and as they take a step towards you, you take 2 steps farther on. Keep moving ahead. That's leadership. What we normally think of as leadership is in fact following. We elect national leaders. They're not leaders at all, they're followers. We take the guy who represents majority viewpoint and we give him an office. But he got that office because he represents the majority. In other words, he follows where everybody else is going. He's not a leader, he's a follower. Followers get elected. Leaders get out in front and lead. And don't worry if the others are lagging their feet behind you. If you're right, just go do it. What do you need, applause? You need people around you to tell you you're right? Damn it, don't you know you're right? Then what are you waiting for? Take a position and stand on it. Get in front and lead. Or get in line and follow. Or, as we said earlier, get out of the way, because this chiropractic is not going to stop. We're on the march now, and we're moving. But we need you, we need leaders in your community. And you can't lead as long as you think the way the rest of the community does. If you're not prepared to stand up and be counted, you're not going anywhere. You're asking society to tolerate you instead of you changing society. For years now, chiropractic has been giving up its vision in order to be tolerated in the Valley of the Blind. It's time we change. It's time we change society's thinking. You see, we've been led to believe that if your principle is right, it will survive. If you live the good life, and you love motherhood and the flag, and you go to church on Sunday, everything will come out and it'll be all right in the end. Well, that's just where you're going to get it, right in the end. Don't you know that your entire society was raised medically? You think you can go to an American court of justice and the chiropractic cause will be heard and justice will be rendered? Let me tell you, first of all, there are no courts of justice in the United States of America. This is not meant to be an inflammatory or revolutionary statement. It is a statement of fact. In this country, we have courts of law. not courts of justice. The job of a courtroom is to decide what the law says. It is a court of law. It is not the court's job to determine what is equitable or what is just, merely what is legal. So you have no courts of justice. And if you did, in order to get justice, the first thing you need is an unbiased jury. Now, where in the world are you going to find 12 good men and true who were raised without the medical brainwashing? Where can you find 12 chiropractors who are not second or third generation chiropractors, who were not raised with a medical brainwashing? Look at the people who sit on either side of you in class. Look at the guys you talk with in the cafeteria. How were they raised? The same way you and I were, with a medical brainwashing. The public at large is raised to think medically. How in the world do you expect them to understand chiropractic while they think medically? You turn to science and you ask the departments of government and the scientists to give a fair, unbiased look at chiropractic. And they do, within the limits of their medical understanding. They take your scientific research and they scrutinize it under the microscope of medical thinking, and they come up with a conclusion that they think is honest and fair and unbiased. But how can it be when the mind that examines it is biased to start with? We've got to realize that in chiropractic, we are a minority group. We're behaving as though we were the majority. We're not. We are a minority group. Can't we learn a lesson from other minority groups? Haven't you seen what happens to minority groups in this country who keep quiet? For 200 years, the black man kept quiet. And for 200 years, he rode in the back of the bus. And every time some revolutionary black came forward and said, we've got to move this thing, we've got to change this country, the other blacks were the ones who turned on him. It wasn't Whitey who put him down. It was the other black man who said, hey, look, man, everything's all right in this town. Just leave things alone. It could be a lot worse, you know. We haven't had a lynching in this town for 7 years now. You start making waves and we get lynchings again. It was the other blacks, the Uncle Toms, that put him down. Don't you find the same thing in chiropractic? Some chiropractic revolutionary or visionary gets up and shows you the path to freedom, and all the other chiropractors say, hey, cool it, man. They're allowing us to live. They're giving us Medicaid. If we don't blot our copybook, they'll carve up the dirty medical pie with us. They'll give us some of their money if we play their dirty game. All right, it's these Uncle Toms in chiropractic that are going to put us down too. And yet we have to move this thing off dead center, and we can't do it without moving ourselves. You can't make omelets without breaking eggs. Some people are going to be very unhappy with what we do. But chiropractic is going to do one of two things. It's either going to move forward or it's going to stay where it is. And if you stay with the people who want it to stay where it is, then you're not a part of the solution, are you? Then you're part of the problem. We must start changing minds, and we do that by standing up and being counted, by becoming leaders in our own right and telling that chiropractic story, though 10,000 other chiropractors tell us we shouldn't do it. There's a tremendous movement afoot for acceptance, for tolerance. When you leave here, when you graduate, and even when you leave here today to go back to your apartments and to your places of employment, pressures will be put upon you to be reasonable so we can accept you. You're not one of those radicals who wants to take cancer patients, are you? You know, there was a time when a chiropractor couldn't join a country club. Now they welcome you with open arms. Come on in. We want your kind. We need chiropractors around here. You're not one of those Reggie Gold fanatics who wants to take cancer patients, are you? And pretty soon, well, no, I like it here. It's nice with your arm around me. I'll sell out. How much do I get? The pressures that will be brought upon you today are very subtle pressures. There will be pressures for you to give up your heritage, give up your principle, and be accepted in the Valley of the Blind. To use medical terminology, to try and limit chiropractic to the treatment of certain diseases and refer others to the therapists. In actual fact, we shouldn't be treating any diseases. The treatment of disease is a fool's game. The purpose of chiropractic is the restoration and maintenance of the integrity of the nervous system in all people 20, 30 years before disease is identifiable. All of this so-called medical science is based upon diagnosis. Nothing can be recognized until the pathology is so far advanced that classic symptoms present themselves. And by then it's very often too late. You are going to offer a new thought in healthcare, prevention. And when it comes to prevention, you have no opposition, you have no competition. Nobody on this earth can offer healthcare. Everybody else is offering disease treatment. So chiropractic does have a reason for existing as a separate and distinct healing art. Now, that may mean changing some of our thinking about Medicare and Medicaid and insurance programs. It may mean changing some of our thinking about fitting into a medically oriented society. But it's that self-same society which has led the world to the sorry state that it's in today with regard to health and emotional health. I don't think you begin to realize the potential of your chiropractic. Do you know what you can do with those 2 hands, with those 10 fingers? My God, you have the answers to all of the health problems of mankind, physical and mental. Emotional disorder is caused by an imbalance in body chemistry. Look at the kids who drop acid. They take a little LSD, body chemistry changes, and all of a sudden their emotions are out in left field. And that's no different from mom with her martinis. I love to see mother with a cigarette in one hand and a martini in the other saying, boy, I hope my kids never turn onto grass. They make a big distinction. But that martini changes body chemistry enough that she's ready to go out and do the boogaloo. The emotions change with a change in body chemistry. Don't you think by restoring nerve supply to the organs which balance body chemicals, in restoring homeostasis, you'd be contributing largely to the emotional health of the world? Don't you think that might bring about some political change in the world? I wonder how many stupid wars in the history of man were caused because somebody was emotionally disturbed because of a hormone malfunction caused by vertebral subluxation. My God, I'd love to get out there in Washington, D.C. and start adjusting a few subluxations. Where I think chiropractic should go, and how, and the route, I think is clearly known to you. I was thinking about it the other day on a long plane ride back from San Antonio, Texas, where I've been giving a seminar and talking with some chiropractors there. And the thought developed as to where would chiropractic be 50 years from now. And I thought, well, that depends on which one of 2 paths it takes. It could be everywhere or nowhere. Now, I'm essentially an optimist, and I projected chiropractic into its rightful and proper place in my mind, the place where it's going if you'll take it there. Get in front and lead. But then I thought it could go the other way if we follow some other kind of leadership. If we are prepared to give up our principle for acceptance, if we will give up our vision in order to be tolerated in the valley of the blind, we could one day see this article in a newspaper. An article date-lined, Spring Valley, New York, August 16th, in the year 2022. Headline: Last practicing chiropractor dies at age 97. Today in Spring Valley, New York, Dr. Reginald R. Gold, chiropractor, passed away at age 97. He is survived by a wife who is also a chiropractor and who retired from active practice several years ago. Thus ends an era in American history. Chiropractic started in Davenport, Iowa in 1895, and there followed a long and bitter struggle for survival against the combined might of organized medicine and the pharmaceutical industry. In the beginning, it seemed as if the dedication and devotion of the chiropractors and the logic of their cause would be enough for them to overcome their monumental foe and to replace it as the world's #1 healing art. But sometime during the 1960s and 1970s, the tide gradually turned against the chiropractors. More and more chiropractors realized the hopelessness of their self-appointed task of saving the world. One by one, they crumbled under the pressures of society and gave up fighting for their lost principle. They took instead the easier path of working for their personal acceptance and for status in the community. One by one, their radical leaders died off or were deserted by their followers. And with each successive move away from their radical and unacceptable theories, the chiropractors became more and more a part of the established health team. 7 years ago, in September of the year 2015, just 120 years after its birth, chiropractic officially died, as almost all of its remaining few practitioners were formed into a paramedical group to aid doctors of physical medicine in manipulation. A few who failed to qualify continued to practice illegally under their defunct chiropractic licenses. The last of these, Dr. Reginald R. Gold, passed away last Monday. The funeral was unattended.